Welcome to Let's Talk About Books, baby, where we talk with your favorite LGBTQ plus authors. This is Anita Kelly, and my guest today is S.L. Coney, or Shaw Coney. Hi, Shaw.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How about yourself?
I am well as well, because how could you not be well on this beautiful spring day?
Oh, I don't know. It's a little cloudy here, but still good. We're still good. Yeah.
All right, all right. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm on the East Coast, and we're having a really nice extended weekend weather. So it's hard.
Nice.
It was hard to work today.
Yeah.
Um, so, Shaw, you have this book that I have been hearing about. It's called Wild Spaces,
hmm
and when is that? When is that coming out?
yeah. So it's a novella. It comes out on August 1st, and it should be, widely available from your favorite bookseller. So
Great, great. So, can you tell us about it?
I can. So it is set in Charleston, South Carolina. And it is about a boy and his family, and it's a coming of age story. It's a boy with his dog story, and we've got a grandfather who comes in who is somebody the boy has never met, and so he spends a good deal of the book trying to figure out this relative that he's never met before, and the changes that are occurring in his family and within himself, as he is confronting this grandfather, and like trying to deal with the unknown and what kind of the fracturing that is happening within his family. So
Okay. So, is the grandfather's visit unexpected, or
yeah, so
okay?
it is his mother's father, and he just shows up one night out of the blue, unexpectedly, and and it's pretty clear that his mother, the boy's mother, is not all that pleased to see him, and so he's really just turns into like this force that is sort of putting a crack in this family, and driving them apart. Um, and the boy really is trying to figure out why that's happening. And nobody's giving him a lot of good answers. So,
Wow. Okay. So his family life sounds like it dramatically changes with the appearance of his grandfather.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, there's lots of changes that are happening within the family and within himself. So, he's starting to confront, the fact that maybe he's more like the grandfather than he wants to be, and sort of this, maybe something monstrous, maybe something otherworldly is happening. So,
Mm. So a lot of sounds like self exploration, um,
hmm
some family of origin issues, um, and dysfunctional family issues.
yeah, it's really about it's really about generational trauma.
Oh.
It's about how family systems can perpetuate that trauma, when they hold on to secrets,
Hmm.
and kind of what's lost when we hold on to secrets and don't disclose the things and explain things that are happening, um, and just like history and understanding. Um, there's not a chance for any of that to happen, right?
No
So,
healing has gone on,
yeah,
and yeah, and history repeats itself. Then, right?
yes.
Yeah. I gotta ask, are you a therapist of some kind?
um, so my professional background, my training was in clinical psychology.
Okay.
Uh,
I could
so
tell you're using words. I'm a therapist, so you're using
yeah,
words that, yeah, a lot of people just don't talk in that same language.
yeah. So like families, we we get set in patterns when we're in families,
Mm-hmm.
and um, those patterns are what we learn, and so then we pass those patterns down to our children, and it just sort of becomes like this vicious cycle sometimes. So
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Definitely. Yeah.
yeah.
So,
So.
Wild Spaces has been described as boy's life meets H.R. Lovecraft. What does that mean?
Oh my goodness. So when I set out to write this book, I really wanted to capture this sense of imagination and play and magic that can exist in childhood. I had read several things, and I had read a story called The Familiars, and which did that really well. And then McCammon, his boy's life is also very much kind of rooted in this childhood magic. So I think that's where they're getting the boy's life comparison to, because it's about a boy, growing up with his family, and so that kind of ties into that. And then I think you get the H.R. Lovecraft piece because it is very much about dealing with the unknown and this otherworldly kind of thing, and these things that you have to face up to, which are kind of at the core of Lovecraft. So,
Okay.
yeah, it's just kind of bringing those two things together.
Okay. What genre would you put this into?
You know, dark fantasy, horror. I like to think that there's a little bit of a what some people would call a literary feeling to it, because it does focus on character. It focuses on character development. Um, but it's definitely in the horror, kind of the horror and the dark fantasy
Mm,
genre.
okay. And
Yeah.
and what is the significance of the title, Wild Spaces?
Yeah. So it actually comes from a line in the book, towards kind of towards the end, and the boy is kind of musing that, like, we all kind of have these wild spaces within us, where things can exist, and um, things we didn't know about, ideas we didn't know about, strength we didn't know about. There's just these broken pieces, but there's also these wild spaces where anything can happen, right?
Does that come through his reconciliation with all these pieces of himself?
It does. It kind of comes at the end where he is kind of facing up to things and dealing with the fallout of everything that has happened in the book. So,
Okay. So how did you come up with the storyline?
oh my goodness. So, well, like I said, I set out to write a story about that childhood magic, this imagination that can happen and kind of bleed over into real life when you're a kid. Um, and I had this image in my head, and I'm one of these writers, like I'll get an idea and I'll jot it down on a note card, and I have like a place that I put it and I keep it. And I just had this visual that I really was sort of enamored with, and so I started with that image, and I started with the idea of writing about childhood, and this kind of like magic. Um, and as I wrote, it turned into this other thing. It deepened into the subjects that I was talking about. And the funny thing is that when, that original image, it did not actually make it into the book. But it did give birth to that final scene that's in the book. So it's you kind of see what happens before that final image. Is kind of where I leave you. So
Okay. All right. So you started out one way and kind of went another way, I'm hearing?
yeah, I'm not a writer who sits down and like plots things out ahead of time.
Okay.
That's not the way that I work. I've tried to do that in the past,
Hmm.
and I always find that the writing feels, for me, very um, surface, like I'm not getting enough depth to it. It feels very kind of wooden. So I really do love to like write and then let it go where it will take me, and it kind of give myself room to explore and go deeper, instead of like setting up, kind of beats and structure ahead of time. So I love to get kind of the core material down and then go back and like figure out, kind of that pacing and the beats and all of that sort of thing.
Wow,
So
that's probably is. Do you think that's harder to do?
I think I'm not what I would call a fast writer.
Okay, all right.
So I think it probably takes more work, but having tried it both ways, I still I love to be able to get in and just play with it and just follow a train of thought and see where it takes me.
Okay.
And I will stop sometimes if I get stuck. If I'm writing, I will get stuck and I will go to my notebook, because I write on the computer. I can't write fast enough to keep up with my thoughts. So I write on the computer, but I will, if I find myself getting stuck or something, I'll go back to my notebook and then I start just brainstorming in my notebook. And I do that typically by just asking myself questions, or if I'm having trouble getting depth into a character, I'll go in and just let them write a monologue. And that's not stuff that necessarily gets into the story, but it informs what I'm doing. And that allows me to kind of find my way through when I get muddled up.
Mm-hmm.
So,
wow.
yeah.
So, no outlining or even like character development beforehand?
So it kind of, so I feel like those are two separate questions.
Yep.
So outlining, I'm a huge fan of like retroactively outlining. I don't outline beforehand, but when I get a rough draft, I will go back and then I will outline the rough draft. And that helps me see where, plot holes exist, or if something is not moving the way that it should. That kind of helps me get everything in order and get a kind of like a task list for things that need to happen in the next draft.
That's a really clever way to do it.
It works for me.
Yeah, yeah.
It works for me. The page is really just it's a place for play for me.
Okay.
And so, if I'm outlining before and I start, I used to teach APA style. And I start feeling like I'm writing research papers if I'm outlining beforehand. So coming to it with a sense of play and an idea of like exploring these characters and these relationships, then that kind of like, it makes it fun. It makes it a place for innovation and growth, instead of putting myself like in blinders or like setting very strict rules like this has to happen, this has to happen, this has to happen.
I could see where like trying to stick to an outline would be kind of confining, and you're setting up like barriers. Like I'm envisioning like those bumpers for kids on the side of bowling alleys, it would, I think for me, would tend to take away from some of the creativity,
It does. It does for me. I think we all work differently.
Yeah.
And so I think, for other people, that outlining is probably very much a generative process.
Sure.
But for me, it's just, I need the freedom to like dream and wander and play.
Yeah. I know authors who outline like they have the whole story done in an outline. I'm like amazed. Like that is discipline, I want to say.
Yeah. It's definitely, I can see how it would be helpful to like know where you're going, to like, I think it would probably shorten the process, like the writing process. It wouldn't take so long.
Yeah.
But it's not what works well for my brain. So
yeah.
As far as character development, that's part of that brainstorming process that I do. And I might start out brainstorming. I might have a idea or a character, and so then I just start asking myself questions, and writing things out, because I am one of these people. I think better in words. I think better when I write things out. So I just start writing it out, get out my highlighters, highlight important things. And so, I might start with that, or I might have some prose in my head, and I'll start with the prose, and then I'll break and I'll go back to the notebook. So it's really just sort of an iterative process. I go back and forth, back and forth.
That's great. It works obviously for you. Your book is due out August 1st, right?
Yeah, August 1st.
And is it a novella? Or
it's a novella. Yeah,
okay.
It actually started out as a short story, and it became very evident very quickly that it needed to get the depth that I wanted in between the family members, and to really showcase what was happening in this family, that it needed to be longer. So it turned into it was a short story. It turned into a longer short story, and eventually was a novella.
Okay.
So,
can you explain to our listeners who may not know what a novella is?
Yeah. So a novella is sort of this spot between a short story and a novel. So we typically think of a novella, and I could absolutely be wrong on this, but I believe it's like 20,000 words is when it reaches novella length. And so you've got novelette, which is below that, and I'm not sure exactly on the word count for that, but and then you hit kind of like the 60,000. I think that's kind of when you start thinking novel. So
okay. So I'm just looking it up, and a novella can be anywhere from 10,000 to 40,000 words.
Okay.
And the novelette can contain 7,500 to 17,000, so they can overlap a little bit there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you were right on the money.
Yeah.
Is Wild Spaces your first published work?
It's not. It's my first book.
Okay.
But I've had several short stories published previously. Mostly I've had one kind of in the horror genre, and the other was kind of neo-noir. I had one that was originally in St. Louis noir called Abandoned Places. And that's completely coincidental. That one is spaces and the other is places, but called Abandoned Places. That was originally in St. Louis noir, and it made it into Best American Mystery Stories in 2017. So.
Oh, great. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's wonderful. So this comes out on August 1st. How would our listeners access your novella?
Yeah. You can buy it, at any bookstore, at independent, but if you have a favorite independent bookstore, you can access it there. You can purchase it from Barnes and Noble. You can purchase it from Amazon. Anywhere you buy books.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
Anywhere you buy books. All right. So is it in coming out in ebook form and paper?
It will be in ebook form. So it's paperback ebook. There is also going to be an audiobook version, and then it's going to be in hardback in the UK.
Oh, wow. How does that work?
I don't know how it works for other people, but I just got an email that was like, hey, we're going to be publishing the UK edition. And I had to email my publisher here and be like, is this for real? Because I had no idea it was happening. And they were like, yeah. Cause I was like, I'm getting scammed. But so I mean, that's the way it worked for me. It was all handled through the publisher.
Yeah,
So,
great. And who is your publisher? We'll throw out a
yeah,
shout out to them.
Tour.com Publishing. I love the work that they do. They're fantastic. Big, huge fan of their books, and I was very, very lucky because as I was writing, and I was like, okay, I want this to go to Tour.com. I want this to go to Tour.com, and just so it was a dream come true. It really was.
Well, how did you choose them and what made you choose them? Like, why do you say, I want this to go to tour.com?
I had read the work that they had done, and was just a huge fan of the books that they put out, the quality, the writing. So was just very impressed. And so it's like one of my top list of like dream markets where this is where I want my work to go. And the person who ended up editing my book, Ellen Datlow, was also like a dream editor. Because just really impressed with the work that she has done in her career.
It's important to have an editor that you can work well with.
It really is. It really is. And, the whole crew, Ellen and the whole crew, have just been absolutely fantastic. You hear so many stories about, bad things that can happen, but I have just been so impressed with everyone.
Oh,
so
cool.
Yeah.
And you're working with Jocelyn. Is she your publicist?
Yeah, so she is kind of handling the PR for the book. Okay. Yeah.
Well, shout out to Jocelyn Bright too, because
shout out to Jocelyn for sure.
Yeah, that's my sister's name. You don't hear that name too often. So
nice. Yeah.
So do you have any work in progress right now?
I do. I have I'm always writing. And I have a novel that I've been working on. It's resting right now, and I've got a few short stories that I'm also working on. So just have to keep at it.
Okay, all right. So no deadlines or due dates for those.
No deadlines, no due dates. Just playing in my head. That's what I do. So.
Okay, awesome. So when did you start writing, Shaw? Like when and like what made you start?
Oh my goodness. I am not exactly sure what made me start writing, other than just the fact that, I had been read to. My mom would read to me, my grandmother would read to me. And so that was a big part of my life. I love to read. And I'm a bit of a cliche, I'm afraid, when it comes to when did you start writing? Because I was literally the kid that was sitting at my mom's typewriter, before I could really put together a good coherent sentence, just playing at being a writer.
With a press card in your hat and a pretzel hanging out of your mouth?
Not quite there. But definitely sitting sitting on the floor with the typewriter and just wasting sheets of paper, just typing out things. So that's, it's something that I always wanted to do. And then I was in my doctoral program, and I, had finished my master's and I was working on the doctorate, and I was just very unhappy. It wasn't what I wanted to do. I wasn't in a place that really felt good for me. And so I happened to be near St. Louis, living near St. Louis. And I had read, looking back on this now, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was so impulsive. But I had read in a magazine somewhere, it's the top cities for writers, and St. Louis was listed. I'm like, St. Louis is really close. So I knew that I didn't want to complete my doctorate. So I quit the program, and I hightailed it to St. Louis and was like, I'm going to be a writer now.
Wow.
And Yeah, it was really no plan other than, I'm going to go find a place to live and be a writer. And I was really, really lucky that I met with a writer that lived here already. His name was Scott Phillips, and he's he's a crime writer, kind of doing the neo-noir kind of writing, and he was holding a book group, like a writers group, through a local bookstore, and it was free. And I was like, well, it was starting up like 2 weeks after I had moved to St. Louis, and I went to that, and it really became really good friends with Scott. Still good friends with Scott, and he really encouraged me to continue writing. And so just was like, okay, I'm going to do it seriously. I'm going to be this writer. And it took, it's taken a while, and there's been a few twists and turns along the way. But I've continued to learn and grow, and, very thankful to also Richard Thomas, who is another mentor of mine, who also kind of took me under his wing. And so was just very lucky to meet good people, and who were very encouraging and uplifting.
Nice.
So, yeah.
That is wonderful. That's awesome. Really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you ever finish your doctorate?
I did not. I walked away from it and was very happy to walk away from it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I went on a this path of self-discovery, and I've worked in nonprofit, and I've worked in I've been a bookseller. I've done all of the stereotypical things. So did some freelance kind of web work and that sort of thing. And so just very very happy to be where I am now. So
great. Wonderful. Well, I'm glad. No regrets. And it sounds like it was a good thing for you.
It was, I can't imagine doing anything differently. Just because I would not be who I am today if I had not done that. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure I would have regretted it for the rest of my life if I had stayed where I was.
Well,
but, yeah. But looking back on it, it's definitely like, whoa, that's scary.
I know, right? That was a risky move, but sometimes you have to take those, follow your gut moves in order to, just kind of be happy and, find fulfillment.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. So, Shaw, who are some of your favorite authors, and what makes them your favorite?
Oh my goodness. I love Stephen Graham Jones. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
No, not at all.
But he has written some of my favorite books. Mongrels is great. Mapping the Interior. He wrote The Only Good Indian. I think his latest is My Heart is a Chainsaw. Really fantastic author. And I love his voice. I love his imagination. And really also he's just really, really good at also breaking your heart. So I love him, and I'm probably not going to say this name correctly, but Nivo, it's spelled Nghi, last name Vo, V-O, and just she writes so lyrically and so beautifully, and just imagination. I'm a reader who doesn't like to have things explained to me, and she does a really great job of setting out this world with these wonderful characters, and then doesn't explain the world. It just exists and things happen, and I really enjoy that. So huge fan of her, huge fan of Stephen Graham Jones. I love Brian Evanson. I love um, I have completely just Silvia Moreno Garcia.
Okay.
Also wrote Mexican Gothic. Really enjoyed that book. So yeah,
So
all these writers, there's just so many. It's hard to pick.
so
Yeah.
these are books that are in that kind of horror crime category.
So more horror,
Okay.
horror fantasy type. I mean, that's really what I've been into recently. I used to write, personally, I used to write more kind of like the neo noir kind of thing, and then I just found myself pivoting more towards horror and body horror and all of that. So yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, and so I really enjoy reading reading that sort of thing too. So
Okay. Awesome. So, Shaw, that is about all the time we have for today.
mhm.
And do you like to hear from your readers?
I do like to hear from my readers.
And how would they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I have a website. It's slconey.com.
And that's
Uh,
Coney as in Coney.
as in, yeah, Coney, as in Coney Island.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, there's a form on there. You can send a message and it'll come into my inbox.
Awesome. That's great. That's easy enough.
Yeah.
That's, and do you have any parting words for our listeners today?
Um, yeah, sometimes it takes a while to kind of get where you're going. It's hard. There's a lot of detours. There are a lot of roadblocks. But like, if you really are dreaming about something, if you really do have your heart set on something, um, go for it. Aim for it. Seek out the people who will lift you up um, instead of tear you down, and be gritty. Stick with it. Have that growth mindset so that you can come in and like take good feedback and let it inform you, and just don't give up. So
I love that. Be gritty.
be gritty. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huge fan. Huge fan of Angela Duckworth, who is not a fiction writer,
Yeah.
but she has a book called I think it's actually called Grit.
Is it?
Yeah, and she's a psychologist that studies like success and
Yeah.
grittiness, and it's a fantastic book. Anybody who is trying to reach their goals, like it's a fantastic book. I highly recommend it.
That's wonderful. Thanks for the recommendation. I'm familiar with her name. I'm
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's just not her
yeah,
book. I'll have to check that out.
cool.
So, well, Shaw, thank you so much for being on the show with us today. Listeners, if you are looking for a fantastic horror novella, check out S.L. Coney's um, upcoming book called Wild Spaces. It's due out August 1st through Tor.com publishing company, and you can find that wherever you get your books. So thanks again, Shaw, for being on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been fun to talk to you.
Yeah.
That's all the time we have for today. And I'm Anita Kelly. Thanks for joining Liz Talk About Books, baby. And until next time, may your journey be lighthearted, peace be plenty, and be safe, folks.